Something is slipping away from you right now, and it's happening so quietly you probably haven't even noticed. It's not your money, it's not your time, it's your mind. Every single day, without realizing it, your brain is getting a little slower, a little weaker, a little less alive. Not from disease, not from age, but from the way you're living. Endless scrolling, repeating the same routine, avoiding anything uncomfortable. It all adds up. And one day you wake up wondering why you can't focus, why you forget things, why everything feels dull. That's not random. That's your brain adapting to a life that stopped challenging it. But here's the good news. You can reverse it. You can rebuild it. And if you do it right, your mind can stay sharp, creative, and energized for decades longer than most people think possible. This isn't about quick tips or feel-good advice. This is about taking control. Because if you don't actively train your brain, it will slowly shut down into autopilot. And that's how people end up feeling alive on the outside, but empty on the inside. So, let's start rebuilding. The first shift is surprisingly simple, but incredibly powerful. Use your non-dominant hand. It sounds almost too easy to matter, but this is one of the fastest ways to wake your brain up. When you switch hands for everyday tasks like brushing your teeth, eating, or even opening a door, you force your brain out of its comfort zone. Suddenly, something automatic becomes difficult again. And that difficulty is exactly what your brain needs. Think of your brain like a network of pathways. The more you repeat the same actions, the more those pathways become fixed. But when you introduce something unfamiliar, your brain has to build new connections. That's how it stays flexible, alert, and responsive. So if you're right-handed, try writing your name with your left. It'll feel awkward. You might mess up. That's the point. That moment of frustration, that's your brain working again. And once you understand that, you realize something important. Growth only happens when things feel uncomfortable, which leads to the next habit. Do one hard thing every single day. Most people spend their lives trying to make everything easier. They avoid discomfort, delay challenges, and stick to what feels safe. But your brain doesn't stay young through comfort. It stays young through resistance. Every time you push yourself into something difficult, you send a signal: adapt. That hard thing doesn't have to be extreme. It could be speaking up when you'd rather stay quiet, waking up earlier than usual, saying no to something tempting, learning something new when you feel tired. It's not about the size of the challenge. It's about the act of choosing discomfort. Because when you stop doing hard things, your brain starts shutting down unnecessary effort. It becomes efficient, but in the worst way. It stops growing. There was a man who once described feeling mentally exhausted all the time. Not physically tired, just foggy, slow, disconnected. And the reason wasn't medical, it was behavioral. He had spent years avoiding anything that challenged him. When he finally started introducing small struggles back into his routine, cold showers, daily reading, quiet walks without distraction, his clarity came back. Not overnight, but steadily, like flipping a switch that had been dim for years. That's the power of intentional challenge. Now here's something most people don't want to hear. Your phone might be the biggest threat to your brain right now. Every time you scroll, your attention is being trained to jump from one clip to another, one post to the next. No depth, no stillness, just constant stimulation. And your brain adapts to that too. It becomes restless, impatient, easily distracted. You start struggling to sit with a single thought, a single task, even a single conversation. Worse, you might not even notice it happening. Try this. Sit in silence for 5 minutes with no phone, no music, no background noise, just you and your thoughts. If that feels uncomfortable, that's not boredom, that's withdrawal. Your brain has become dependent on stimulation, so you need to retrain it. Start small. Set aside 30 minutes a day with zero screens, no scrolling, no videos, no background audio, just quiet. Walk, think, write. Anything that allows your mind to slow down and reset. At first, it will feel strange, maybe even uncomfortable, But over time, something powerful happens. Your focus comes back. Your thoughts become clearer. You start feeling present again. And that's when you realize you weren't just distracted before, you were disconnected. Now let's talk about something that seems basic, but most people get completely wrong. Sleep. Not just how long you sleep, but how you sleep. Because your brain doesn't recharge in light, noise, and interruptions. It recovers in deep, uninterrupted darkness. That's when it clears waste, strengthens memory, and resets your emotional state. If your room has lights on, screens glowing, or constant noise, your brain never fully drops into that deep recovery mode. You might sleep for 7 hours, but wake up feeling like you barely rested. And over time, that compounds. Memory weakens, focus drops, mood shifts. The fix isn't complicated, but it requires discipline. Make your sleep environment as dark and quiet as possible. No glowing screens, no constant notifications. If needed, use an eye mask or earplugs. Keep your phone away from your bed, because real rest isn't passive, it's intentional. And if you get this right, everything else becomes easier. Thinking, learning, even controlling your emotions. But if you ignore it, no amount of effort during the day will fully compensate. Your brain doesn't just need activity, it needs recovery. And most people are starving it of both.
Now, here's a question that might be uncomfortable to answer. When was the last time you were completely alone, without your phone, and actually felt at peace? Not distracted, not entertained, just present. For most people, it's been a long time. And that's a problem, because your brain was never designed to be constantly stimulated. It was built to think, reflect, and process. But when you fill every quiet moment with noise, notifications, videos, music, you lose that ability. That's why something as simple as walking alone in nature can feel so powerful. No phone, no input, just movement and awareness. At first, it might feel boring. Your mind will reach for something to grab onto. But if you stay with it, something shifts. You begin to notice small details, the sound of wind, the rhythm of your steps, even your own thoughts becoming clearer. This isn't just relaxing, it's restorative. Your stress levels drop, your creativity improves, your mind starts organizing itself again. There was someone who struggled with constant anxiety and mental fog. Nothing seemed to help until they started taking short, quiet walks every day. No music, no phone, just presence. Within weeks, their thoughts felt sharper, their emotions more stable. Not because of anything complicated, because they gave their brain space to breathe. And once you experience that, you realize something important. Your brain doesn't just need input, it needs silence. Now, let's take it a step deeper. What you feed your mind matters just as much as how often you use it. Most people only consume information that feels comfortable, ideas they already agree with, opinions that match their own. And while that feels good, it quietly limits your thinking. Because your brain doesn't grow when it's always right, it grows when it's challenged. So instead of only reading things you enjoy, start exposing yourself to ideas that make you pause, perspectives that don't immediately make sense, concepts that force you to question your assumptions. That moment of confusion, that hesitation, that's growth. There was someone who had strong beliefs about success and money until they read a perspective that completely contradicted everything they thought they knew. It didn't change their mind instantly, but it forced them to think differently, and that alone expanded how they saw the world. That's what keeps your brain flexible, not certainty, but curiosity. And speaking of curiosity, here's a habit that most people have unknowingly destroyed: trying to remember. Think about how often you forget something and immediately reach for your phone. A name, a date, a word, it's all just a search away. And while that feels efficient, it comes at a cost. Every time you skip the effort of recalling something, you weaken your memory. You're training your brain to rely on external tools instead of its own ability. So start doing the opposite. The next time you forget something, pause. Give yourself a moment. Close your eyes if you need to.
Try to pull the answer from your mind before you check. It might feel frustrating, that's normal, but when the answer finally clicks, something powerful happens. You've just strengthened a mental pathway that would otherwise fade. Over time, this builds sharper recall, faster thinking, and more confidence in your own mind. Because memory isn't just about storing information, it's about retrieving it. And if you never practice retrieval, you lose it. Now, here's where things get even more interesting. If you really want to keep your brain young, you need to be willing to look bad, to struggle, to fail, to feel like a beginner again. Because your brain grows the most when you're doing something you're not good at. Think about it. When you're already skilled at something, your brain runs on autopilot. It doesn't need to adapt. But when you try something new, something unfamiliar, it has to work. That's where growth happens. So try something that challenges your ego. Learn an instrument, attempt public speaking, take up drawing, even if it looks terrible at first. It's not about mastering the skill, it's about forcing your brain to stretch. Because every time you push through that awkward phase, you're building resilience, flexibility, and mental strength. And if you avoid that discomfort, your brain slowly becomes rigid, predictable, limited. The next habit might surprise you because it has nothing to do with thinking and everything to do with how you connect. Most conversations today are surface level, quick exchanges, polite responses, no depth. How are you? I'm good. And that's it. But your brain craves more than that. It needs meaningful interaction, conversations that make you think, feel, and reflect. Because when you engage deeply with someone, your brain activates in a completely different way. You're not just processing words, you're interpreting emotions, analyzing meaning, forming connections. That's mental stimulation at a higher level. So instead of staying in small talk, try asking something real, something that invites honesty. What's something that's been on your mind lately? What's a challenge you're dealing with right now? You might be surprised by the response. And more importantly, your brain will remember that moment because it wasn't just information, it was experience. That's what keeps your mind alive, not constant noise, but meaningful input. Now, here's something subtle but incredibly important: your routine. It might feel productive, organized, efficient, but if it never changes, it becomes a trap. When you repeat the same actions every day, your brain stops paying attention. It switches to autopilot. And while that saves energy, it also reduces awareness. Life starts to blur together. You wake up, go through the motions, and before you know it, weeks have passed without anything feeling memorable. That's not just boredom, that's your brain disengaging. So start breaking the pattern. Take a different route. Change the order of your morning. Try something new, even if it's small, because novelty forces attention, and attention is what keeps your brain active. When something is different, your brain wakes up, it observes, processes, adapts. And that's how you stay mentally alive, not by doing more, but by doing things differently. Because a brain that never experiences anything new doesn't grow, it just repeats. And over time, it fades into the background of your own life.
Here's a truth most people overlook. You don't really understand something until you can explain it. It's easy to read a book, watch a video, or hear an idea and feel like it clicked. For a moment, everything makes sense, but then a day passes, and it's gone. Not because you didn't pay attention, but because you never used it. Your brain doesn't keep what it doesn't apply. So the moment you learn something, share it. Explain it to a friend. Say it out loud. Even if no one's around, teach it to yourself. That process forces your brain to organize the idea, simplify it, and make it usable. And that's when it sticks. Because learning isn't about consuming information, it's about transforming it into something you can use. Now let's talk about how you relax. Most people think they're giving their brain a break when they play simple, fast-paced games or scroll endlessly. But that's not rest, it's stimulation without effort.
And over time, that weakens your ability to think deeply. Your brain starts expecting quick rewards with no challenge. Tap, swipe, win. No strategy, no effort, just dopamine. But real mental strength comes from the opposite. Games that require planning, memory, and patience, like chess, puzzles, or problem-solving tasks, actually build your brain. They force you to slow down, think ahead, and deal with mistakes. It's not always fun in the moment. It can feel frustrating, but that friction is what strengthens your thinking. Just like your body needs resistance to grow, your brain needs effort. And if you only ever choose what's easy, you train your mind to avoid depth. Now here's something that might sound unexpected. Your eating habits affect your thinking more than you realize. When you're constantly eating, snacking, sipping, never giving your body a break, your system is always focused on digestion, and that uses energy your brain could be using to think clearly. That's why short periods without food can actually improve mental clarity. When your body isn't busy processing meals, your brain shifts into a more alert state. Focus sharpens, thoughts become more organized. You feel lighter, mentally and physically. You don't need anything extreme. Even a simple overnight fast, going 12 to 14 hours without eating, can make a noticeable difference. At first, you'll feel hunger, maybe even discomfort. But if you stay with it, something interesting happens. Your mind clears. It's like removing background noise you didn't even realize was there. And once you experience that clarity, you start to see how much constant consumption was slowing you down. Now let's shift to how you generate ideas. Most people rely on talking, throwing out thoughts quickly, reacting in real time. But fast thinking isn't always deep thinking. In fact, it often stays on the surface. So try something different. Instead of speaking, write. Set a timer, give yourself a question or a problem, then write continuously. No stopping, no editing, no distractions. At first, your ideas will feel obvious. Then you'll hit a wall. And that's where it gets interesting. Because when your brain runs out of easy answers, it's forced to dig deeper, to explore connections it wouldn't normally reach. That's where real insight lives. Not in the first thought, but in the fifth, the seventh, the one you almost didn't get to. And that's how you train your brain to think beyond the surface. Now let's talk about discomfort again, but in a very physical way. Cold exposure. Most people avoid it completely. They want warmth, ease, comfort at all times. But when your body is never challenged, your mind follows the same pattern. It avoids stress. It resists effort. But when you expose yourself to something like cold water, even briefly, your entire system reacts. Your breathing changes, your heart rate increases, your focus sharpens instantly. There's no room for distraction, no room for overthinking, just presence. And in that moment, you're training something deeper than physical tolerance. You're training control. The ability to stay calm in discomfort, to resist the urge to escape, to stay grounded when everything in you wants to quit. Start small. Even a short burst of cold at the end of your shower can create that shift. It's not about endurance, it's about response. Because if you can manage your reaction to physical stress, you build the foundation to handle mental stress as well. And finally, there's one habit that might seem simple, but has a profound effect. Memorization. In a world where everything is stored externally, phones, apps, search engines, your brain has stopped holding on to information. Why remember something when you can just look it up? But that convenience comes at a cost. Your memory weakens. So bring it back. Choose something meaningful, a quote, a short poem, a verse from a song. Repeat it, write it down, practice recalling it without help. At first, it might feel unnecessary, but over time, you'll notice something changing. Your recall improves, your focus sharpens, your confidence grows. Because memorization isn't just about storing words, It's about strengthening your ability to hold and retrieve information. It's mental training at its core. And when you combine all of these habits, challenge, focus, rest, depth, discomfort, you create something powerful. A brain that stays active, adaptable, alive. Because your mind doesn't stay sharp by accident. It stays sharp by design. And now you have that design. So the question is simple. Are you going to use it or let your brain drift into autopilot? Because the difference between those two paths isn't small. It's everything.